Time to put your galleons where your mouth is. By Tsume Yuki. Chapter 10. Just following the law. Regulus Black grinned to himself, clutching the broom closer to his chest. It had been a month since the Quidditch trials. He'd gotten in. He'd actually gotten on the team. He was the youngest seeker in a very, very long time. Regulus had grinned. He'd been so overjoyed with himself that he'd ran from the Quidditch pitch and straight to the library. There, Turais had been tutoring the two girls in his year, the Smith girl and a Muggleborn. Regulus had ignored them and all but flung himself at Turais, the older boy only just managing to catch him in a hug. He'd happily informed his older brother that sweet Salazar, he'd gotten on the team, and Turais had grinned, excusing himself from the two girls to take him down to the kitchen. There he'd asked a house elf for some party food, and the two of them had celebrated. Ever since Regulus was 7 and had gotten his first broom, Turais had been teaching him all about flying. The older boy was, as he was with most things, excellent at it. He taught Regulus all he knew, from taking off smoothly to the most dangerous maneuvers in existence. And while Turais didn't play Quidditch himself, he'd been more than happy to help train Regulus up for his chosen role of Seeker. And he'd gotten in his first year! And now it was his first match. The only people to know outside of the Quidditch team was Turais, Slughorn, and Orion. His father had been pretty proud, happily sending up his broom with a note hoping his grades would be as outstanding as his sudden entrance to the Quidditch team was. Not even Sirius knew he'd joined the team. And now for the Slytherin team! Regulus took a deep breath, summoning his courage. Turais said he was good, really good. He would have to be good to get on the team in his first year. Turais believed in him, and so did the rest of the Quidditch team. Now he'd get the chance to show what he was made of. Mounting his broom, Regulus watched as the chaser shot out, followed by the beaters and then the keeper. And then it was his turn. And Seeker... Wait, am I reading this right? Yes, I am. Slytherin's new Seeker is none other than Regulus Black. Heck, that kid must be talented to get on the team in first year. Regulus hovered in the position the team had drilled into him, hands gripping the broom just like Turais had shown him 4 years ago when he was first learning. The Gryffindor team was spluttering, Potter loudly calling out that Sirius was a traitor to the cause in a joking fashion. Eyes scanning the stands, Regulus grinned when he spotted Turais sat in the Slytherin stand, wrapped up in his silver and green scarf and smiling back at him. Now it was time to show the rest of Hogwarts just how good a teacher Turais was, and that the youngest Black brother could rise to the occasion. He'd held the snitch high in hand and let out a low laugh, having felt something akin to hysterical. He'd done it! He'd caught the snitch just before Potter put through what would have become the tying goal. Slytherin had won 170 to 160. He'd managed to catch the snitch just in time. The Slytherin stands had roared their approval, and Regulus had grinned so brilliantly. Watched as his brother shot a spell into the air, a fox dancing around in the wispy air. What would become his animagus form? Oh, he knew what his form was. He had only just started his training to become one under Turais' watchful eye. Along with Sirius and his friends, the lot of them would gather in an unused classroom on Sundays to study. Turais, who'd already accomplished the transformation, guiding them through the required steps. But there was the problem of the Slug Club interrupting this week's lessons. Turais had called it off, saying that he couldn't really let Professor Slughorn down, or rather, their parents would never let him live it down if they caught wind of his skipping out on the club. Regulus didn't care because he'd been invited to this week's dinner following his Quidditch success, which meant he'd join Turais for the dinner and the Evans girl who was friends with the Snape boy 2 years above him. They were both supposed to be good at potions, and the Evans girl was really good at charms. She'd helped him out with one when he couldn't find Turais. Mother might have gone on about how the Muggleborns were ruining society and that they didn't really belong, but Regulus couldn't see it. Heck, if there were no Muggleborns, then purebloods would have to do all the nasty jobs. That should have been a reason enough for his mother. But Regulus quite liked the Evans girl. She was smart and just as capable, if not more so, than many of the pureblood females he knew. Ready to go, Reggie? Turais had poked his head into the dorm room, and Regulus nodded, snatching up his wand and fitting it onto the holster above his forearm. A "you're finally starting school" gift from Turais. He got a Sirius one as well. "Come on then, let's get going." "Isn't he lovely? I wonder when he's going to start dating. I swear I saw Ella Hopkins giving him the eye yesterday." Severus Snape grimaced, looking over at the two fourth years he had been unfortunately lumped next to, sat up to Slughorn's table. Professor Slughorn always had the seats set up in such a way that the most talked about student of the month would be sat closest to him. Of course, the seat to Slughorn's right had not seen a different person for the past 4 years. That was Turais Black's seat. Honestly, there was little the golden boy could do wrong in Slughorn's eyes. It would probably require him releasing the basilisk upon the school for Slughorn to even begin considering that the boy may be anything less than perfect. Though that wouldn't happen, because the boy had already tamed the huge snake, which had even happily handed over a few vials of basilisk venom. Vials which the eldest Black brother was currently fiddling around with. 2 measly little vials, neither bigger than the boy's forefinger, but it would be worth thousands. And Black had total access to the source. The amount of money in that chamber, in that basilisk alone, it was beyond comprehension. The potions that could be created alone with those 2 little vials. Slughorn was lavishing praise upon the youngest Black brother, but seemed to realize that Turais Black was almost absent-minded, distracted. Usually he was paying attention to his brothers. Severus wasn't a liar. Well, not to himself at least. Turais Black was the perfect sibling. He did everything for his brothers. He let them grow, but he was always there to help them the second they needed it. He went far beyond what any other person had ever done, would probably die 1,000 deaths for Sirius and Regulus Black. He doubted the 2 Black brothers knew just how lucky they were. He knew that little trip to the chamber had been to sort out the differences between himself and Potter, or at least as much as they could. But he'd seen the compassion on Black's face for his younger brother, how his eyes were always assessing Sirius's reaction. And while Severus was happy to be included in looking around such a historic place, he was bitterly jealous. Why couldn't he have had a brother to look after him? Was he undeserving? Why should the Black brothers have what he did not? "What have you got there, my dear boy?" Slughorn had turned his attention to Turais Black now, Regulus peeking around the professor's arm, sat upon the coveted left-hand seat as he was to look at his older brother. "I confess, Professor Slughorn, perhaps I've been a bit of a bad student, but I'm sure you, at the very least, shall forgive me. I just got absorbed, and..." Turais Black trailed off and Severus grimaced. The boy could act, that much was evident. Not that it would be hard for the boy to play upon the professor's obvious reverence for him. "Excuse me, Professor, I have been astoundingly unclear there. You see, in my second year, I found the fabled Chamber of Secrets." Talk at the table stopped. Slughorn was all but gawking at the boy now. Gingerly, Turais Black extended his hand, offering up the 2 small vials. "There was a dead basilisk down there, and I only just finished cleaning it up. I was hoping that you'd be kind enough to help me break the news to the rest of the world." That was clever. With all of Slughorn's contacts, there was no way the boy could slip up. And Slughorn would never let this opportunity slip by. "Of course, my boy, I'd be honored to help. Why, the fabled Chamber of Secrets. There's not a lot down there," Turais murmured, running one hand over his brow as if somewhat nervous and upset by the notion. But Severus doubted it. For one, the basilisk was alive, just hidden in a big statue. And Turais had stated he'd hidden most of the things he'd found. Now he just needed to figure out a way to get the boy to take him down there again and let him study everything. There's a few books, but they're all in Parseltongue and not allowed to leave the room they were in. But there's a few tapestries made by Salazar's daughter, and 1 or 2 by Rowena as well. "This is truly excellent news, my boy. I'll contact some people and we shall get to it right away, shall we?" Albus Dumbledore was not happy. He hadn't been truly happy for a long while, but for the past few years his mood had been spiraling in a downwards fashion. There was a bleak outlook on the terrorist attacks which had just recently begun to board upon a civil war led by Lord Voldemort. But the school had always been stable, unchanged, until 4 years ago, when a young boy had walked into the halls and had been sorted into Slytherin. Albus had been exceedingly nervous about the new Parselmouth, how he acted so much like the perfect student Tom Riddle had been. It had taken Albus 2 years before he accepted it wasn't an act, and that was only with the sorting of Sirius Black. The younger boy adored his brother, looked up to him, and that kind of love could not be faked. Turais Black was almost distant, polite, and pleasant to be around, but held little significant emotional attachments. All but his brothers, and those the brothers associated with. Turais Black loved fiercely, ferocious in his protection of his brothers. He had heard from the grapevine that he beat his oldest cousin and her husband in a duel at the age of 13. That the Black family head, Arcturus, had denounced Bellatrix not 2 weeks ago for going against family obligations was another point of interest. Turais Black had been changing the school, but Albus was not sure if it was for the better or not. But he knew one thing for certain. He was not happy with this. "Surely we can do this in the morning. I'm sure Mr. Black would be willing to wait until I have inspected the chamber."
"Don't be silly, Albus."
Slughorn clapped a hand down on the shoulder of the black boy, who almost buckled at the unexpected move. 2 representatives from the ministry stood before him, along with the new journalist from the Daily Prophet, Rita Skeeter.
"The lad has been looking around the place since his 2nd year. I'm sure it's quite safe. And Turais here is quite the capable wizard. With you along, even if we do run into a problem, which I highly doubt, then it will be dealt with. Let's get going."
"Hold on, Professor." Rita all but purred, her claw-like fingers coming down on Turais Black's shoulder and curling around the limb. The boy turned his gray gaze back on the woman, face expressionless, as he looked between the offending hand and the woman who owned it. The reporter didn't let go. "I just want to have a few words with our little discoverer here. You don't mind, do you, Mr. Black?" And then the boy grinned, that of a predator that had Rita's eyes widen for a moment. Of course not. When Rita returned, she had the most curious look upon her face, like a student who'd gone to sit an owl for charms, but found the test to be an alchemy newt instead. As if she was completely unprepared for what she'd just faced and come out unsure of how she was going to present the bad grade to her parents. Turais Black had seemed no different and led them to the second-floor bathroom where tragedy had struck just over 30 years ago. The black air had greeted poor Myrtle, the ex-Ravenclaw, offering a sly smile and all but blowing the boy a kiss. Turais Black had evidently not stopped at charming students and staff. A hiss of parcel tongue and the sinks had parted. To think, the murder had happened right at the entrance to the chamber. "And you said you found a dead basilisk in the chamber?" one of the ministry officials stated, and Albus grimaced. "Wait, dead?" "Yes, I have the remains in a vault at the Goblin Bank, and I won't be pushed into letting anyone else near it. If you have a problem, take it up with the goblins." "Now, wait just 1 minute, Mr. Black. That basilisk, I believe the law states that if the location discovered is over 300 years old, then anything and everything within belongs to the discoverer." "There are laws, Mr. Wardson. I'm just following them." The ministry official grunted, folding his arms across his chest and staring down at the black air. They couldn't correct him, either. As heir to an ancient and noble house, the boy no doubt had read the rulebook back to front before showing them his discovery. Albus was more than willing to bet that was why the boy had waited so long. "I'm willing to show the tapestry room in the main chamber. The library will do you no good because it's all in Parseltongue. Well, aside from the one book documenting Hogwarts' expense, I guess you could take that one. I'm still sorting the books and haven't figured out the passwords for several other rooms yet." Albus sighed. When Turais Black had been sorted into Slytherin and declared a Parselmouth, he knew he'd be a headache. He'd just not realized how big a one the boy would become. But as a Parselmouth, he could be invaluable against Voldemort. He needed the boy on his side against the Dark Lord. So he'd play the boy's game, subtly pushing him towards the right side. They might still have a chance in the war after all.